Hello, everybody. I'm Alex, CEO and founder of MarsBased. This is another episode of Life on Mars. So welcome to our show. And you will be listening to the story of Jorge Gómez Sancha, one of the co-founders of TinyBird, a company providing infrastructure for large data organizations. And what we'll be talking today is not only their tech stack, so this is, for full disclosure, a pretty nerdy episode. We'll be talking about product, we'll be talking about scalability, we'll be talking about dealing with large data sets, we'll be talking about structural changes in this kind of products, how they are selling it to the companies, and how this kind of products has already been existing in the market. Some of their competitors have been not only there for 10 years in the market, one of them, actually Snowflake, is publicly traded company. Another one, BigQuery, is part of Google. So they're competing against very, very big fish in this ocean, right? We'll be talking about product, we'll be talking about technology, lessons learned, a couple of fuck-ups they've had, how are they going back to coding after having held managerial positions in previous companies, and much more. So stay tuned because this episode is very, very interesting and I hope that you enjoy it. Let's go with it. Jorge, welcome to the show. Welcome to Life on Mars. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Alex, for having me.
You're one of the co-founders of TinyBird. We're here to talk about TinyBird because you guys are focusing a lot on data at scale, right? Let's give a little bit of context to the audience. So what is TinyBird and why should companies buy this product?
Okay, so with TinyBird, what we're trying to do is enable any developer to work with huge amounts of data and build applications on top of that data. At the rate that data keeps growing, we believe that if there aren't better tools that are out there right now to build applications and to react quickly to what goes on in your business and to understand what happens to your data, it will be very difficult to compete. This is a problem we, as founders in TinyBird, we've experienced in pretty much all of the companies we've worked before. At Carto, being the one where we all worked together in the past. And we could see how every year our customers would come with more and more data, and we would spend a lot of time helping them pre-aggregate that data, do all kinds of ETLs and preparation of the data just so that their applications could scale. So what we're doing is enabling them to work with all their raw data and build APIs on top so they can start building applications right away on top of that data.
Before we go into the technical part of it, let's get the business side out of the question. Let's get it out of the way by tackling it head first. Why did you go into that? So take me back to the times of Carto, perhaps. That was more or less when you guys had the inception of this product, right? What was the product? What was the problem that you couldn't solve there, and why did you not solve it inside of the company, inside Carto, for instance?
Yeah, that makes sense. So basically, if you think about what I was saying before, is a customer in Carto would come maybe with 10,000 records or 50,000 records. And Carto was built on top of Postgres, and Postgres is an amazing database that we love and that we know really, really well. But the problem is that it's not a database that it's designed to scale indefinitely for any use case or something like that. Normally, no database is designed to scale indefinitely for any use case, but Postgres is a transactional database, and as data kept growing every year, as every year went by, customers would come maybe with an order of magnitude more data. So maybe the next year would be 100,000 records, then 1 million, then 100 million, etc. So, that forced us to, before actually solving the problems of our customers, would have to help them figure out what was the best way to structure the data, to put it in the database so that Carto could scale to manage those data sets in the context of building real-time visualizations. This is what Carto used to do in the past most of the time, which was getting all of that data, visualizing it on a map under different use cases. And we had to help the customer sometimes bring that data to the minimum required in order to have different zoom levels and different types of aggregations. And every time there was a new dimension or a new filter or something like that that you wanted to add to your final visualization, you'd have to go back to that pre-aggregation, that ETL, and change that such that, again, you would have the minimum amount of data possible in the database, and so that you could scale it up, because potentially those visualizations could then have hundreds of requests per second, and so they have to be very, very optimized. And then as some of the guys that are now in TinyBird started going to other companies, they found the same problems elsewhere. Like whenever, like in Javi Santana went to BBVA, for instance, and he saw the same problems, is whenever you have huge amounts of data being produced constantly, and you want to join that data or enrich that data with other sources of data, like maybe if you have transactions about sort of visits to an e-commerce and shopping cart transactions, you're going to want to know what products exactly, what categories those products belong to. So you're going to want to join that data with other dimensional data in real time to understand what goes on. Every time we wanted to do that in different companies we've worked with, that's been a pain. And the bigger the data, the bigger the pain. And especially when you want to do something beyond exploration. So if you want to do exploration, there's a lot of great data warehouses out there, like BigQuery or Snowflake, or there's a lot of technology to do that. But when you want to build something in real time that scales to hundreds of requests per second or thousands of requests per second, then you need something different. And we see that people end up building huge cathedrals of infrastructure to manage those kinds of use cases. And we, as developers and people that come from from engineering, we liked solving business problems more than we liked the plumbing itself. The setting up all of those ETLs and all of those data pipelines. So we wanted to build something that would enable any developer, it doesn't matter if you're a data expert or not, to build something that would that can scale to any amount of data and that can react in real time to whatever's going on with your business. That's a long explication.
And I was going to go into that because it seems to me that what you're solving here, a business person would conceive it as a BI platform, a business intelligence platform mixed with a data warehouse, and the solution's already there, and you have brought it up, so thank you for the assist. That Snowflake is already there. Actually, it's a publicly traded company, so it's not a small company. There's Google's BigQuery, and they've been around for 10 years now. So it's not like you're entering precisely a new market with some small players competing for the same headspace. You're actually joining a market that is already there with some really big players that have been there for a really long time. So what's the value proposition for me, as I understand TinyBird, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're taking a dev-first approach, right? It's like you're taking a little bit business out of the question. It's like you're building something kind of like a Stripe, kind of like a Shopify that's very engineered to be popular around developers, and you can penetrate the companies through the developers. Is that the way of it, or what's value proposition?
I mean, about the competition, this is obviously why you have to put together a team of crazy people and a team of crazily good engineers, which is the case in TinyBird. We're super fortunate, not just the founding team, which is amazing, but also the people that we're hiring, which are absolutely great. And it is true that what happens is that if you think about BigQuery or Snowflake, they have relatively low latencies, but they're normally in the seconds latency, like maybe a couple of seconds, 3 seconds. With BigQuery, normally you have a sort of an initial time that you can't get rid of, depending on the use case, but normally you can't get rid of that initial sort of preparation time, and then the queries are super fast. But if you want to do something that scales to hundreds of requests per second, and you have a latency of 3, 4, more than a second
The
latency.
data is going to change more rapidly than the
No,
result,
not
right?
because of that. Not because of that. Not because of that. It's because in order to scale hundreds of requests per second, if every query takes 3 seconds, you need a lot of infrastructure. You need a lot of CPU power in order to scale that up. And
correct,
and we believe that real time is and when I talk about real time, I talk about two different things. But latencies over than beyond 1 second, they're too slow for certain use cases. If you want to have a feeling of instant feedback, and you want to have reactive applications, and you want to build dashboards that hundreds of people can look at the same time and figure out and be and have a good experience, you can't have queries that take 3, 4, 5 seconds. You need queries that take 200 milliseconds, 300 milliseconds. And that's what we aim for. We aim for super low latency over huge amounts of data. And that opens the door to doing different use cases, such as not just dashboards, but alerts and automation and complex event processing and things like that. And that's what we're seeing. When we go to customers, is that they have a very specific use case they're struggling to do with the big queries or the snowflakes or those kinds of technologies. And when they realize they can do with TinyBird, and I'll tell you about what's underneath the covers later if you want. What they can, the types of things that they can do, and the ability to scale that they have, and not just that, but the flexibility, because with TinyBird, you ingest data, you start ingesting data, then you build a SQL query, and you expose the result as an API endpoint with one click, and you can start consuming that from your application right away. You don't have to build a backend, you don't have to build security, you can just consume that right away. And that flexibility, the fact that any new use case is just one SQL query away and just expose that new SQL as an API endpoint, that's a huge plus as well. So you could think of, you were saying a developer sort of a value prop. You could think of this as a data warehouse for developers if you want. And we're thinking about this, how would developers want to work with this kind of technology such that they can apply what they know already and how they're used to working. And that is SQL. SQL is the standard query language, it's used in many databases and developers normally know. But not just that, APIs, and it's something they're very used to working with. And also, we are adding a number of tools around the product, around the platform, that help you to build data projects or data products in the same way you do development projects. So we are working to enable things like integration with Git for all of your queries and all of your schemas, continuous integration, testing, all of those things, which are as important with data projects as they are with any other development projects.
I know. Actually, that's why I brought it up, because maybe business people, they're more used to having to use things like the Oracle BI stack or something like that, right? And that's extremely low, and it's painfully low, and it's clunky, but they're so used to it that they don't care. They know it takes like 10 seconds to regenerate a chart or something like that, but they're used to it. But if you're developing stuff underneath and you want to have some integrations, maybe those 10 seconds are long, like way too long of a time to take decisions, right? And you need to take some, maybe some of your integrations work with real-time data. So I see the value proposition that you're
and just to add to that, we talk about low latencies on the queries, but it's as important when you think about the ingestion is you want to have answers as soon as possible, in the sense of whenever data is happening, we want you to be able to query that data as it's being generated and not later. As in, what if you can understand your business as it unfolds, as it happens, why would you want to understand it later? If you can access it and understand it at the moment it takes place. And this is something we've discovered, that in a lot of big companies and small companies as well, but sometimes people live with batch times and batch processing, and with the fact that they have to wait for a few hours to understand what has gone on with their promotion or with their Black Friday or something like that. They live with that as people live with white noise, in the background. It's something that you get used to it. You think there's just no alternative. That's just the way things go. But the moment you demonstrate to them, look, you can have this in real time. You can know right now what's going on. It's like a wake-up call. It's like, wow, if I can have this in real time, what else can I do in real time? And it's just we're seeing how it opens up a new way of thinking about this, and how some of the companies we've worked with, the moment they've solved the use case they were interested in real time, they're looking at their other problems in a different way, because they don't see they didn't see the opportunity before, and now they do. It's like, okay, if I could reduce these times to from hours to seconds,
correct,
maybe I can automate all of those decisions that now I have people waiting to act on. Maybe I can automate them all, because I know how to derive the insights. I just need to automate it now because it's real time. So it's been a great. This was our hypothesis when we started, and it's been great to see it happening with our customers.
Before we go on and please our developers audience, let's please our business audience. And can we talk about a project that you're working on right now? Maybe not mentioning the brand or the customer, or whatever, but like a specific, some tangible project that we can say, okay, this is where we bring the most value in. And like, look, in this project, before and after, like this is what we do.
So we cover. We're trying to focus on a number of use cases, but since developers would be listening, I'm going to tell you about the last one we're doing. We're working with a company which is very popular with developers as well. It's a platform as a service type of company, and they have. So think about like it's not Heroku, but think about kind of a Heroku type of company. So they have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of applications out there that their users build, and they provide the hosting and the platform for those applications to live in. So one of their problems is they have edge servers. They have like a CDN built with Amazon technology all over the world. And those edge servers are receiving traffic constantly. And one of the problems they have is sometimes they have denial of service attacks. So someone will start hitting one of those servers like crazy, and that generates a number of problems for them. First, it increases their bill, their Amazon bill massively, because suddenly you're serving hundreds of thousands of requests, and they need to be able to stop that in real time. So they need to be able to know that that's happening and to stop it. So before we came along, they had a super complex setup using multiple components in AWS, receiving data from all of those services, figuring out, with Redis and with many different databases, what was going on, and then try to figure out whether there was basically what they've built with TinyBird is that they gather data, the logs from all of these servers as they get generated. They're being sent to a Kafka server or cluster, and we ingest all of the logs from all of their edge servers. We're talking about, sometimes 50 edge servers, sometimes 150. So it ebbs and flows depending on the traffic. And on top of that data that it's coming in, they've built a set of API endpoints that all of their edge servers can call every 5 to 10 seconds, just to see if there's suddenly an increase in traffic for a particular IP. So they look at, okay, if in the last 10 seconds I've had more than 50,000 requests from a particular IP that was in their report, that means it's a denial of service attack, and then that edge server will ban that specific IP. So basically, we have a lag from the moment the logs get generated to the moment they hit TinyBird through Kafka. It takes about 3 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds. And then they can query that every 10 seconds from their edge servers. So there are hundreds of servers querying TinyBird to figure out if for that particular edge server, there has been a denial of service attack, and they can switch it off. So that was not a use case that we were thinking about when we started TinyBird.
It's pretty convoluted, but yeah.
So to make it simpler, all the edge servers send data through Kafka to TinyBird, and then in TinyBird they build a SQL query that as an API endpoint, and each edge server can query TinyBird to know if there's some IP that's generating a denial of service attack. If that makes sense. So and we're ingesting from 50,000 requests a second to 200,000 requests a second. So it's a pretty crazy scale with a simple TinyBird account.
If you had to build this with the current incumbents in the BI or data warehouse, maybe by the time that you get the real data, your server is already down, because it's been these 3 to 5 seconds that you get using your infrastructure on top of their 10 or 13 seconds or whatever minutes they needed to compute all of this. Maybe you would be without a company by the time there's
exactly
resolved. Okay, that's a really good example. Can we delve into right now into technology? Because what's underneath the covers, and what technology did you use to build this with, and what's the whole infrastructure to whatever amount of detail you can speak about?
So one of the guiding principles when we started that Javi Santana and Raul Ochoa set from the technical point of view was, we need to keep this simple. Let's not. One of the problems when you start something is you tend to have a lot of different technologies, and that makes it harder to maintain, even though sometimes you're choosing the right tool for each job, but then you need a lot of experts in different technologies. So we have, as our programming language of choice is Python. All of the application is built on Python using Tornado, and as Raul says, Python is the second best language for every problem, and so that meends that it's not. It's not ideal. Probably, there's probably better languages to do a front end and so on. But it's worked great for us because it's great to manage data with Tornado. We chose Tornado because of the multi-threading capabilities, and so far so good. That's where the backend is built. There's some C++ as well. Components, and that's because we use ClickHouse, and ClickHouse is the it's an open source analytical it's an all-up database. It's a columnar database that it's amazing. That basically it's incredibly fast. But in order to communicate from some of the from Python to ClickHouse, some of the bindings are in C++, but it's mostly Python. And then in terms of, we use Redis for metadata storage. We use, what else do we use? We use Nginx and as our web server, and we use Varnish as well for sort of intermediate caching and a couple of other tasks in the middle there, but that's about it. That's our stack. And in the front end, we use a single page application with React.
I was gonna go. So, what determined the choice of Python? We usually the technological choice, or at least the programming language choice, comes from previous experiences, right? So, if it were for you well in the past, why shouldn't you go with this? Yeah, like you don't want to take any bets on a new product, especially when you're running out of time, when you want to nail it in the first time, or you have raised some money and therefore the time is against you. So is there any other insight as to what determined your programming language by choosing Python, for instance, or other than it worked well for us in Carto, for instance, or in other?
Well, actually, Python was not the programming language at Carto. In Carto was was built. I mean, Carto did have a lot of different components built in different programming languages. Part of it was built on Rails. Then there's another part was built with the API the public APIs were built with Node.js. And there was Redis there as well. There was Postgres, of course, and PostGIS. But here, I think, and you'll have to ask Javi, or Raul, which I very much recommend you invite at some point. Sure. But I think it was more about how comfortable they felt in being able to move quickly, iterate quickly, and get results quickly. The multi-threading with Tornado was a big part as well, because we wanted to be able to do things like, for instance, when you send a CSV or a URL, you can ingest a URL like a CSV that is sitting in S3 or wherever. When you send a very large CSV, what we do is we break that up in chunks, and it ingests all that CSV in parallel in many threads, so that the ingestion takes place much, much faster. And Python and Tornado's multi-threading capabilities there played a part as well.
Okay, yeah, that's actually a very good reason. But do you guys code for this? Have you gone back to coding? Because I mean, you have been C-level, and or you guys come from a background of more like managerial positions, C-level, VP of technology, whatever. So have you gone back to coding, and how did it feel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the one that because I guess I was
the one CEO.
That
you don't code. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, you can see some comments from me, but I just did that to gain a little bit of respect amongst the team. Like, hey, I can still do some things,
I can still comment. Like, I changed the copyright year number on the website, something like that. That's what I do, by the way. So
I often come in and change the copy of the website and things like that. No, but basically, I'm the only one doing sales, almost not full time, but almost full time right now. And then that means. Essentially, when you start a company, you have to, there's so many things to do. You have to decide who does what. And one of the problems that is very typical to have at the beginning is that you don't set good boundaries in terms of, who does what and who takes the decisions where. And we had been working together for a long time. And even though we knew each other very well, when you're starting out, the first few months is very difficult to know exactly, where should you decide and where should you talk to the rest of the founders to decide one thing or the other. But pretty soon we sort of each got in our groove. Obviously, I was the one that had been without coding or not coding for the longest time. So it completely made sense for me to basically pick up all of that stuff and try to sell and get. I had run my own company in the past as well. So, closing contracts and doing proposals and doing all those kinds of things that I'm also very comfortable with. So I think I'm the only one that's not coding almost full time. Like Javi Santana is coding almost full time. Ochoa obviously is coding full time, and everyone we've hired until now is an engineer. So it's everyone's on the product.
That's interesting. Actually, one of the reasons I brought it up, it's because if Python is not the language that you were using in your previous companies, there's definitely something that you need to learn the ropes of. And if you had been in managerial positions, there's some dust to be shaken as well, right? Because you're getting a little bit rusty over the years by not programming. So it seems to me like it might have been a little bit tricky to get this whole thing started, like going back into programming and actually in a different programming language and or framework that might have changed significantly since you last used it, right?
Yeah, for me, for instance, I had never programmed in Python. So when I came in and I wanted to, understand the product and maybe do a couple of features to sort of get a sense of how it worked and so on, that was extremely hard. I was just basically hitting the code with every stick I could find to make it work, But for Javi Santana and Raul and these guys, these guys are the cream of the crop, and I don't know how much they had been programming in Python before, but from the outside, it felt like they had been doing it forever, and the amazing thing with these guys is that, whenever they realize there's a bug in ClickHouse, they'll go in and fix it in ClickHouse in C++. They don't have any, there's no barriers there in terms of, I only do Python or I only do C++. They just do whatever they need to do, or we do whatever we need to do. And that's something that's a big part of the culture in TinyBird. Like, some of the guys that were coming in at the beginning were a little bit like, we were saying, hey, who can do this? Like, we want to set up an example using AWS and doing this or that. And one of the guys said, hey, I'd like to do it, but I've never done anything with AWS. It's like, we don't care, just figure it out, go in there, just get dirty, figure it out. And you're going to, and it's a great way to encourage people to grow and to understand and to become better engineers, because being a great engineer is not equal to being a great programmer. It's so much more. So.
And that was the first reason why I brought it up. The second is totally escaping me right now. I lost the thread. But actually, one of the things I wanted to comment on is that that the other thing is like how to scale this kind of product, right? Because you're building a B2B. Oh no, now I got it. Now I remember. It's like from your perspective. So you and I are CEOs, but like you and I have been developers, and you and I have been coding until, I don't know, in my case it's until like almost 10 years ago, right? Still code from time to time, but like nothing professional. It's kind of like pet projects. And I miss it a lot. How do you deal with this feeling? Like, are you the kind of nostalgic coder that's like, yeah, I'd like to go back to coding, or I would like to do it like, I don't know, 20% of my time, or fuck this shit, like I don't need it anymore, like I'm better off by doing sales, maybe not using these words, but like, I know my time is best invested if I only do sales.
I miss what I miss is not coding specifically or by itself, is the ability to focus on a problem for a long amount of time.
Correct.
That's what I miss. The flow of just working on a big complex problem for a long time. Do you know when I code now? When I say code, I mean also like sometimes, like for instance, recently I had to set up my own Kafka demo using in my local machine. So I had to figure out how that worked and how our agent worked, and set it up on my own, which is not coding, but still, it's sort of a similar feeling to figure out problems out. But
correct, yeah.
When I do that, when I'm procrastinating, like if I'm putting something off that I really should be doing, that's when I get like this huge urge to do something technical and focus on a technical problem. But the reality is that 90% of the time, even though I'd love to jump in and try it for myself, it's not the most efficient use of my time. And I feel, and I'm comfortable with that. And if someone else can do it, like, Alberto or Carlos or Alejandra or Elena or anyone in the team are going to do it much, much faster than I could. And a lot of the times makes much more sense than they do it. But then there's other aspects. Sometimes I like to do it because I need to understand it in depth. So then I can go and sell it and explain it and defend it and so on. And that's a good investment of my time when I need to get that. So let me do this. Let me build this use case, materialize this, use the command line interface, figure out why they're struggling, this customer or other, because then I can defend it and I can be useful beyond just the sales process, if you know what I mean. So those are the times when it's a good investment of my time.
I wholeheartedly agree with this answer. Like it summarizes 100% my experience. It's like I should never get into the projects that we sell as an agency at MarsBased, but sometimes I do, and my peers are like, "Why do you do it? Like you should be selling." It's like, yeah, but I need to keep up with the technologies because like I never programmed in Angular, right? I might have done my things, and like I'm doing now some React on my own, but like I haven't professionally coded in the languages that I'm selling, and I need to understand the complexities and all of that. Of course, as a developer, for me, it's very easy to soak it up, right? But I want to have some first-hand experience, and even if it's like scratching the surface on pretty much everything. Which sort of brings me back to the next question, which is what I was going to go first, right? Mixing a little bit technology and business, because B2B is very complex to sell, right? Because at the very beginning, you're really small. You might have like some very diverse kind of clients. You said that you had one really big client from the get-go, which is usually not the way to go about it. But before we go into distribution of clients, is at the very beginning, you need to integrate yourself with other platforms before you become popular, and you make it and they integrate with you, and then you become the platform, right? More or less, at what stage are you at? You are pre others integrating with you, or what kind of company are you at?
Yeah, we're still. I mean, we've been super fortunate in the customers that we found, big and small. I mean, we have amazing customers and amazing relationships with our customers, but we are not at that stage where people want to integrate with us, and they're trying to knock down our doors. But we are very opportunistically integrating with whatever makes sense for our plans. There are two aspects of that. One is from the ingestion point of view, we are prioritizing the things that are well suited for real time. For instance, Kafka is really well suited for real time. A lot of people are using it. We're not in love with it for various reasons, but a lot of people are using it. And they use it to collect a lot of data. And actually, it's not that easy to take advantage of it once you have it in Kafka many times. And we are trying to make that super easy, that you can just connect to it, write some SQL, expose APIs, and build your application. So rather than having to build your own consumers and things like that. So another thing that we're exploring is change data capture as well, which is basically connecting to the bin log, for instance, of MySQL, or the write-ahead log of Postgres, so that we can actually synchronize data from a transactional database in real time. So you can have analytics at scale, like with no effort, no integration effort from your side. So that's something we're exploring as well with some friendly customers. And then, for instance, we expose APIs for, that's the gist of a product. You build APIs on top of those huge amounts of data, those streams of data. And but at the same time, there's always, in every customer, or almost every customer will come and say, after building whatever they're building with our APIs, they say, hey, there's this guy in this department that wants to connect with Power BI or Tableau or something like that. Because once you have the data in there, then it becomes really valuable for someone to be able to do more stuff with it. So we, rather than building connectors to every single BI out there, and there are a lot, the guys came up with a great idea, which was, let's use Postgres as a proxy. And they built a foreign data wrapper, which essentially takes, in a BI, you will put something like a Postgres URL, a connection URL that points to TinyBird, and that will forward the queries to TinyBird and get the results back and send them back. So there's no data in Postgres; it's just acting as a proxy. If you know what I mean.
That's smart. I was gonna go with the question that begs the question. That the Postgres really doesn't scale that fast, right?
Yeah,
so
no.
You're just using it for the connection.
Exactly. So it receives the SQL query and it sends it forward to TinyBird, and TinyBird generates the results, sends them back. And so the feeling is that you're connecting to a Postgres, but actually you're using TinyBird. So whatever API endpoint you've generated to your Tableau, it looks like a table. And that's great, because you can have someone building the results of what you actually want to expose, and then the Tableau or Metabase or Power BI or whatever you're using will only see the tables that you're exposing, basically. So that's really handy.
That's brilliant. That solves the friction of having to switch over to your product, right? Because in B2B, most of the stuff is like, oh yeah, I need to switch over from, I don't know, if I'm building a competitor to Stripe, most people will be like, yeah, but I got Stripe already and it works, and it might not be the best, or you were mentioning, right? I'm using Tableau. and I need an integration with Postgres, and I want to integrate with a database, not with your thing. But you managed to solve that.
Yeah,
So that's pretty smart.
Yeah, that's a sort of startup or entrepreneurial thinking, if you want. Like, we don't have time to build connectors to every BI out there, and actually this was an idea that I don't know, I think it was Santana or Raul had, and they did what we call a minimum shitty prototype, which is what's the minimum amount of code that we can do to validate whether this could work or not. And once that you see that, oh, actually this could work, then we spent some time sort of building that. But we haven't really announced it or anything because we're very focused on the real-time aspect of this, on the APIs and so on. And we have it there just because we don't want to lose a deal on the back of, hey, I can't connect my Tableau to this, or I can't connect my Power BI to this. But accelerating Tableaus right now is not our main use case. Like we are, when you have the amount of data, the amount of data that we're dealing with, Tableau normally is just not good enough. So we build APIs, and normally our customers, they want to see more snappy, more interactive applications that really let you see what's going on in real time.
Let's go into the culture, because you've been bringing up speed pretty consistently throughout the interview, right? And and I remember that one of the key aspects in your culture is speed wins, right? Or speed
That's
matters,
right.
something like that, right? How does that translate into a real life, casuistics, and what other aspects of your culture are determinant in what you're building into the product?
Yeah. About speed, I mean, we believe speed is the ultimate differentiator. No matter how you look at it, if you are able as a company to take decisions quickly, then you can do more things, you can react faster, you can advance faster, and that compounds over time. But at the same time, if you look at it from the technical point of view, if all your queries take 100 milliseconds instead of a second, it means you need 10 times less infrastructure to serve the same amount of queries, if you know what I mean. So that's the sort of thing that compounds and scales over time. And it go also to the user experience. If your application is very responsive and very speedy, and it looks like everything is immediate, then that generates a great user experience. Your customers want to use it more, and another thing they will speak about you. Another thing that compounds over time. So that's how does that apply to what we do? From a day-to-day point of view, for instance, a lot of the times we use Basecamp, for instance, to work, to collaborate, and sometimes someone will ask, "Hey, I'm thinking about this, or should I do this, or should I do that?" And you decide, man. It's like it really, like 90% of the decisions are reversible. If you make the wrong decision, we can change it later. But spending a lot of time deciding and maybe distracting 10 people in a channel to answer this particular question is probably not worth it. Just make a decision, get it done. That's what we talk about when we talk about speed wins. And then from a technical point of view, like
in product, how does that translate into the product?
Yeah, from the decisions point of view, it applies as well when you're building. It's like, should we do this? Should we do that? Let's just go with something. When we try it, we'll see if it was the good decision or not, and we can always change it later. Most of the time, that's not 100% of the time, but most of the time with small decisions is like that. And then speed, as in, we look at performance as the key feature of TinyBird. If the things you do with TinyBird are not fast, then we can't compete with the big queries or the snowflakes and so on. That's our differentiator, that you can do things at scale, super fast and super flexibly. And if we build features that are not fast, then they're not ready to go out in production. So that's when we will spend actually more time to reduce to speed up things basically, or reduce the latency of APIs and so on.
another aspect that might be part of your culture, I don't know, but you guys do it excellently, like nobody else. You share a lot of what you learn, like your culture of transparency and giving back to the community is outstanding. You got a very good technical blog, but also, like you have done your webinars, speak at conferences all the time. Javi is also like very active on Twitter and also sharing a lot of stuff, and not only from the business side, but also like product and tech and we did this and we fucked up here and we accelerated the product 10x by just doing this. So is that interwoven into your company culture? Is that part of the culture? Is that something that you do as part of your marketing actions, or how does that come about?
I think one of the things we've learned is that, it doesn't matter how amazing your product is. If you don't talk about it all the time, if you're not willing to repeat over and over why it's so good and why is it different.
That's the CEO speaking there, yeah.
No, but actually, this is something I feel I've learned from Javi,
Correct,
for instance. Like Javi, he's so conscious about this. Like he will, constantly speak about, because first, when you speak about things, you get a lot back. Like people will reply, and then you learn in the process, and that's really great. But also it's I read somewhere, I don't remember exactly where, but that one of the things that people hate about marketing, or if you want to be good at marketing what you do, you need to be willing to repeat the same thing over and over and over and find creative ways of speaking about the same thing in different ways, and that's something that we have as a company interiorized pretty soon, and it's absolutely obvious whenever we do a consistent effort of speaking and tell, here's what we've done, look at this thing, blah blah blah. You put out a blog post, you think no one's reading it, and suddenly you get inbound leads, and it's like, oh, actually people do read this, So, and a lot of people come back to us like months after we've written a blog post and say, hey, I read your blog post about this and that. It's like, really? That's pretty that's pretty cool. So that's something that we and from an advice point of view, and if someone is starting a technical product out there, you should spend at least the same amount of time marketing that you spend developing, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult that people learn about what you're doing and want to try it out. So,
And it might be frustrating at first because, I remember at the beginning of MarsBased, we started blogging like 8 years ago, right? And even though our blog has not been super technical, we do share a lot of tech stuff, right? But you don't have an audience. So literally you're just blogging to no one. And then you start having 1-2 people a day on your website, and then 10, and then 50. But by the time you get like more, I don't know, like we should be like, I think 300 to 1,000 people a day, maybe 3,000 people a day. I don't even care, because we didn't even check, right? But by that time, you don't care anymore. But the compounding effect of having done so in all of these years is going to pay back, right? I do remember the first time we got one of our first clients through SEO, just because we had blogged about, I think it was Sidekick or whatever, Ruby Gem, whatever in the past. I'm like, oh, I found you through this because you guys do Sidekick, and we do have this problem with Sidekick. It appeared once in our website, just once. It's like, wow. And they turned out to be our clients. I think it was the guys from Park and Go or Wall Sensing. I don't remember, one of the two, right? I was like, wow, they can find us for one keyword? That's crazy. That's not what SEO tells you all the time, right?
Yeah.
But that sense of community, right, it translates into other things. Like I think, I don't know, I heard this sometimes, like you should speak about your company until your clients speak about it for you.
That's right.
So I think we're more or less following the same transition here. I think we're already in the point where our clients speak for us, but like I'm pretty sure that your clients will be speaking about you in conferences really, really soon, whenever the conferences are back. And I was going to go into that. So conferences, is that something that has worked for you in the past as a product and as a technical company?
It's been a bit weird because this year, I mean, conferences, we haven't gone to as many as we would have gone to without COVID. We've just participated in 2 or 3, I think, in the whole process. One thing that just as before TinyBird got started, when Javi Santana was already thinking about it, he organized the ClickHouse conference, and that was a great sort of kickoff. We got to know a lot of companies that had problems with data and so on. So that was a great thing to do, and we didn't even have a company yet. So and just to give you a sense of how interiorized this is, in the team. So but now we're trying to start going to conferences and speaking at conferences again. I think Javi Santana is going to speak at Percona this year. And we are, appearing in a few podcasts as well. And so we're not, without trying to overdo it. We think it's really important to be out there and sharing what we do, explaining why, what got us started, what do we believe in, how do we think the world's going to be in the future once we make our mark, and why should people come along for the ride.
I totally hear you, and I think we've got a bigger reason, you and I, to do it, because we're not raising funds, right? We're not fundraising there, and it seems like only B2C and fundraising companies are getting all the press and all the coverage. So as bootstrap companies, or maybe companies with a little bit of fundraising, we need to fight twice as hard for this span of attention, whatever little span of attention we can get. We need to wrap this up. Go ahead.
Just to be absolutely transparent, we have raised a little bit of money. We just haven't spoken about it because we don't we haven't until now. It was just it's more a responsibility than a milestone for us in the sense that we did it in the context of realizing there was a huge opportunity for us, and we wanted to go fast. We needed a little bit, more fuel, but we haven't talked about it publicly or anything. So, but just to explain, basically.
Thank you for sharing. So we gotta go to the last question, which is the signature question of these podcasts. Like everybody fucks up. Everybody fucks up. We're the first ones to fuck up. We all share our technological fuck ups here. So we want you to share your biggest technological fuck up, something that you can sign, something that you signed and you ate it up completely. And if possible, how much money did that translate into?
I've been speaking super well about my technical colleagues, so I think it's only fair that I talk about one of their fuck ups as well. So
it should be yours, though. It should be yours.
I haven't done.
Not anybody else's.
They don't let me close enough to the technology to
maybe previous companies
to fuck up. Okay, that makes sense.
We're gonna be asking Javi and whomever else.
Okay.
Subsequent episodes, but we want something that you have done, that you have been responsible for.
Let me think about this.
Like we all have wiped out production databases. We all have got send some code to production that shouldn't be there, something offensive. I don't know, shipping code on Friday evenings.
I'm trying. I had the perfect TinyBird not made by me problem to explain. So I'm struggling now to find one from a previous company. Let me think about this really quickly.
Can be also like product decisions, something like that.
I can't think of anything right now. You see, I never fuck up. That must be it. No, just kidding.
Pretty humble.
Well, look, I'll tell you one. It was not actually my fuck up, but at a previous company, I won't say the name, but I don't want to get in trouble. But at a previous company that I was managing, we inherited a product that had been built by a consulting company, and 4 months, without realizing it, we had passwords on the clear. Basically, they're being stored on the clear, and basically anyone could have just destroyed us And luckily, no one did. But that was the fuck up was not realizing soon enough. We wouldn't have built it, but we didn't realize it until, by chance, one of the great developers in the team that we were making up just said, "Hey, I don't know if I want my name." He was willing to quit when he saw it. Like, I don't know if I want my name to be associated to this business, because anytime this is going to explode, So we fixed it right away, and so I'll tell you another one.
Because this one didn't really explode, so it didn't turn into a fuck up, but it could have been a huge fuck up. Okay, well, go for it.
And another one was, I used to work at a bank a long time ago.
Sounds fun.
And we realized that we had changed the login procedure, and everybody was super happy because it was much faster and much smoother and so on. And it turns out that with the login, if you entered a username that existed, even if it wasn't yours, if you entered the username that existed and just invented password, it will tell you wrong password, but it would log you in.
What? What?
At a bank, and luckily,
how did that even happen? Like,
well, the thing is, it was in order to validate. It was using. I think it's.
Oh my god! Sounds like the order of validations was incorrect or something like that. Right?
It was a Java framework. I don't remember.
J2EE, something like that, right?
Many years ago, yeah, exactly. Like enterprise Java beans and all of those things. I never really cared for. But the problem was it was creating a session in order to validate the password.
All right.
And then that session basically remained. You would get the cookie, and it would remain alive. And it was just. This is back. I'm very old, and this is back when. There were no frameworks. There was no login providers or libraries out there for everybody to use and extra validated and so on. You had to do it all yourself. And for a while, we put that in production. And luckily, one of the developers realized, just doing smoke testing, said, "Why am I logged in? I don't understand." And just went back, tried it again. And it was actually the great thing that happened there was that is how we reacted to it. Like, suddenly everybody was hyper conscious of how big a fuck up that was. And a security problem is only a security problem once someone knows about it. If no one knows about it, then, the moment that someone knows about it, it can't leave that room. And that's really what happened is like, we were in a meeting room and we realized, oh shit. And then we called in like the two key people that knew about this, and none of us left the room until that was fixed. So it never turned into a known security problem because we just realized it and just kept it in the room, and we're very conscious that it couldn't leave the room until it was fixed. Otherwise, anyone could know, and if it got out there, so it was pretty scary. But
that's pretty wild.
You learn from these things.
Yeah, because back then you must have been using like struts and Spring and all that crap, and the sessions in validation were pretty painful.
We used IBM WebSphere, I think.
Oh yeah,
and Visual Age was our how do you say, our programming environment, our IDE, and we used to say that it would make you sleepy because it took so much time to load. Visual Age would take so much time to load that you would start yawning before you were ready to start programming.
NetBeans and Eclipse, right? Back in the day, they were like, wow, it takes hours to compile, takes hours to fire up. But actually, in a bank, even though that sounds like super scary, but the sole thought of having entered another person's user, like it doesn't even cross your mind, right? Because to a bank, it's only you, like, your login, but you don't know anybody else's, like, I don't know, your personal identity number. I don't know.
Yeah, and we realized because the reason we realized is because the president of the bank would let us his account, his personal account, to do tests.
President.
Yeah, he was super. He's one of the smartest people I've ever come across, and he didn't care. It's like, yeah, just use my account, just don't do anything stupid. And we used to use his name to his account to do some sort of smoke testing and so on. That's God. Because he had a lot of zeros in his bank account, so it was good to test edge cases. It was good to test edge cases.
Long integer, right?
and we realized, because suddenly it's like, why am I logged in? I just didn't try the right password, Otherwise we wouldn't have probably, so we were trying, because we just put this out, we were trying with different passwords, and we realized, and it was pretty scary.
That's a fabulous point to wrap this up. Thank you very much, Jorge. It's been fantastic. 1 minute for you to say what's going on in your product and your company in TinyBird, or your life. How can we help you?
If you people that want to upgrade their experience using data at scale, if you're using Kafka and you want to build applications on top, if you basically want to build data-intensive products over your analytical data, come check us out. Sign up or write us, and and we'd love to show you what we're doing.
That's perfect. Thank you very much, Jorge. Thank you very much to our audience. See you in the next episode.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been great.